Good morning. Welcome to this special program. Today, Zambia mourns the passing of former Vice President, Dr. Guy Scott, who died on the 15th of July, 2026. Dr. Scott's life and leadership marked a unique chapter in this country's history, from his service as Vice President to his brief tenure as acting President of the Republic of Zambia. He stood as a symbol of Zambia's democratic resilience and inclusivity. As we reflect on his legacy, we'll be joined by personalities who are distinguished within their own right, including a historian to help us situate his contributions within the broader arc of Zambia's political journey, a political analyst to examine the impact of his leadership on governance and party dynamics, and a senior member of the clergy to guide us in considering the moral and spiritual lessons his life leaves behind. Together with insights from those that are at the Anglican Cathedral of the Holy Cross, where church service is in wait, their insights will help us honor Dr. Scott's memory, understand his place in this country's national story, and lessons for the future of our democracy. We'll straight get into insight how the church will remember Dr. Guy Scott with Professor Bishop Joshua Banda, who is a presiding bishop, Pentecostal Assemblies of Africa, and overseer of the Northmead Assembly of God. I'd like to welcome you to this program.
Thank you very much. It's an honor.
And we'll straight away go into, from your opinion, how this nation, and I'm sure you've been sharing this, ought to recall, reflect on Dr. Scott's life.
Yes, thank you very much. Indeed, over the last few days since the declaration of the time of the period of mourning, many citizens, including ourselves, have taken time to commiserate with the Scott family and to express our deepest, first of all, shock that, you know, he has departed, and the level of sympathy that we have had to express at this time, because anytime we have a loss of any life in Zambia or anywhere, it's time for us to reflect. But this is a significant figure in this country. Dr. Guy Scott would definitely be missed. So we've been expressing things from various angles. One of the things that comes immediately to mind, which we've tried to reflect on and present to the nation, is the unique role that Dr. Guy Scott played, not just as Vice President of this nation, but as acting president. And I specifically zero in on that angle because I, on behalf of the church, was privileged to work with him very directly. I was the point person, and that was driven by what I must humbly express and project as an extremely unique divine encounter. It was a Tuesday morning, early hours of Tuesday. That day was very significant because I was submitting the last chapter for my PhD research. So I had aimed to get up really early, be at the office before 5. I wanted to make sure I submit before the deadline, which was 18 hours that day. But then, in the early hours of that morning, I had an extremely unique divine encounter, which I think from various fora, people have heard me share it. And I kept this under lock and key for about 3 years before I really began to disclose what had happened. And I can't go into those details. But it was a vision. And so real that I was shown Dr. Scott in very, very unique circumstances. Dr. Scott was shown to me by the Lord wearing a gray trousers, white shirt, yellow blue spotted tie. I have a tie exactly like that. And so this was very unique. And I was shown his picture, and I was given words to say to him. And the words were, "You have given this matter your greatest shot. What remains for you now is to simply hang on until you hand over power to someone else." Now, this was a very, very deep experience. It was like I was asleep, but also somewhat awake. And it was a vision. And so, I got up from the bed and knelt. It was 2 a.m. I spent some time in prayer asking God, what does this mean? And after that intense moment of prayer, I went back to sleep, only to awaken around 6. I was in a bit of panic now. It was beyond the time that I wanted to be at the office. I had a PhD last chapter to, last draft to hand in to my supervisors because this was deadline. So I quickly got ready and rushed to the office. Ordinarily, I must mention this, this is something I would have quickly shared with my wife, but I rushed off. Fast forward, worked that hard that day, submitted the document, and I was now on my way back home. You may recall at that time, the news here at ZNBC used to come at 21 hours. The live news used to come at 21 hours. And so as I was driving home, traffic was heavy. I caught the 18 hours news on Radio Phoenix. And I heard one political voice taunting something very strong. And I heard that voice saying, "I'm warning you, Guy Scott. I'm warning you, Guy Scott." And I'm thinking, Guy Scott? I remembered something. I thought I'd seen something in the morning. Anyway, I carried on. I listened to several other voices, high political voices. And it was clear that this has to do with the tension arising from a letter that he had written to the then acting Chief Justice to order that no candidate should be allowed from that particular political party, the Patriotic Front, because he was acting president, and there was a furor from a section of the party. I'm sure you recall that.
Yes.
Fast forward. So I'm home after 45 minutes in heavy traffic, settled down, meal, and finally I'm settled in the bedroom, and we're waiting for the 21 hours news with my wife. The news comes on. Lo and behold, what I had heard on the radio, I now saw. And what I saw visually on TV, what I saw now was Honorable Kalaba, who was the one speaking. So I related the two items. I only heard verbally, but now I was seeing the visual. And I noticed that it was a very intense moment. I noticed that he was quite upset. And I noticed that he was actually pointing somewhere. And immediately I thought, my goodness, how can somebody be pointing at an acting president like that? But as that news item was going on, again the reflection came, what I had seen in the morning. So I allowed for the news item to complete. Then I turned to my wife. I said, you know what? God showed me this thing about Guy Scott earlier this morning. And I know I rushed to the office. I didn't have a chance to tell you. I said, I now know that was the true vision. This is a message for the acting president. But I don't know. How do I relate this to him? It's late now. By now it was 21:30. And you must thank God for a good wife. She says, call him. So anyway, quickly, I decided to call him. So I picked the phone and I called. Who answers the call? His wife, Charlotte. So I said, this is Bishop Joshua Banda. Is that Dr. Scott? She says, well, one of them.
Right.
And so I said, I'd like to speak to the acting president. I had an encounter. It's a vision. I'm sorry, but I must explain. I'm very convinced this is a message for the acting president. Given what I've seen on the news, I need to see him. She says, oh, well, that's a good idea. She passed on the phone to him. I didn't know what to expect. You know who Dr. Scott was. And so I introduced myself again. And so he said, oh, yes, Bishop, how can I help you? I said, sir, and I narrated what I just narrated here to you. Then he says, oh, well, tomorrow, Bishop, tomorrow is a very, very tough day. I have a cabinet meeting at 9, and I know I'll have kafwafwa. You come in at 11. And that was it. Just like that. So, Wednesday morning, I'm at government office, government complex. What is it? The cabinet office, excuse me. And sitting there, two ministers walked in. One of them was Dr. Simbiakula. They walked in, and as he was opening for them, I think he had been informed by now that I was waiting. So it was about 11:15. So he looks and says, oh, Bishop, you're here already. He says, I don't want to waste God's time. Let me just clear these two ministers and I will see you. So, and sure enough, after a few minutes, the two ministers left. And I was ushered in. Franklin, I walk in there. What do I see? Gray trousers.
No.
White shirt.
No.
I'm telling you.
The tie.
And the blue spotted tie. It sent chills through my body. I must let you know, there are genuine divine encounters that God will allow for people, for families, for nations, to let you know that He's in charge of the affairs of a nation. And this was one of those. I know I've had very few moments to actually tell this story to the nation.
You've done, it's longer than that, I know.
Yeah, but it has its place in history.
Right.
Maybe now is the time.
Right.
So anyway, I sat there, and he gave me where to sit, pulled his tie over, and he had no idea how mesmerized I was, and how I was just chilled, shocked, but I sat there and I knew this was a divine moment. So he says, Bishop, how can I help? I said, sir, I should ask, how can I help? Because the thing that I narrated to you was so real. So I narrated to him the vision, what I had seen, and the words I'd given. I said, I don't understand what all this means, but I need to hear from you, sir. What's going on, and how can we help? Then he sat back again, and he said, Bishop, we're in trouble. So he narrated how he, on his side, had a leading candidate, Miles Sampa, and a few others. And on the other side, within the ruling party, they had Edgar Lungu and a few others, and that they had not come to an agreement as to who should be the candidate.
Right.
And that he, in his role as acting president, as if he expressed himself as acting president of the party as well, he said he had written to the acting Chief Justice as the returning officer, and had specifically indicated that they should wait for internal processes before they could allow anyone to be considered the nominee. And remember, that was Wednesday. Nominations were concluding on Saturday. And you know, each of the parties had days. They had allocated days. And the ruling party had been allocated the last day, I think together with MMD, if I can recall, something like that. Anyway, long story short, after he narrated that, he says, we have a major rift. 10 people are running for this role, but the leading candidate is Miles Sampa. I'm with him, and he explained. And so I said, sir, what can we do? He says, well, can you reach Edgar Lungu? I said, wow. And so we began talking. By that time, the late Secretary to the Cabinet, Dr. Msiskia, walked in and joined us. So I continued to narrate. And after all this had been done, I said, sir, I'm sure we can help. So I decided to open the scriptures. I read Proverbs chapter 21, verse 1 to him, to assure him that when you are in the seat of a king, as he was, as acting president, the word there says the heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord, and that he directs it as a water course wheresoever he wishes. In other words, when somebody is in a leading position as a leader, president or whatsoever, or king, it's a very delicate place to be.
Okay.
They are appointed by God. They don't have to be perfect. But for that season, they are appointed by God. God has ways of directing them and helping them. And if they are sensitive and discerning, they will make the right decisions. They will be guided. If they listen to counsel, God will guide them. It means they can execute sovereign activities, things that will key into the destiny of the nation. That's what I tried to assure Dr. Guy Scott as to what was under play. Anyway, while this was going on, the phone rang. So he got up. This is an inside story. So he got up and went to answer the phone. So I listened intently. He says, hello? Yes? Oh, where did they gather? Oh, really? So who chaired the meeting? Oh, okay, well, what can I do? And he put the phone down. He came and sat down. Then he said, Bishop, it has gotten worse. I said, what do you mean, sir? He says, 14 members of my cabinet have revolted. I'm told that they've had a meeting chaired by Honorable Kalaba, and they're calling on me to resign. Now, at that moment, the vision, that picture, and the words I was given suddenly came alive and made sense. So I said to him, sir, you cannot resign. This will be a crisis within a crisis. I said, sir, now the words that God gave me suddenly mean sense. So I repeated the words to him. I said, sir, the Lord told me in the vision to come and tell you. And what you're wearing now is exactly what I saw you wearing. And I was given these words to say to you. You have given this matter your best shot. What remains for you now is to simply hang on until you hand over power to someone else. I said, sir, you will hand over power to someone else. Hang on. And I said, I would like to pray for you so that we can start the work of trying to see what can be done. Dr. Guy Scott knelt down.
You want to repeat that slowly?
Dr. Guy Scott knelt down in his office. I was totally dumbfounded. I stood up. I laid hands on him. The late Dr. Msiskia was witnessing all this. I laid hands on him. And I prayed on the basis of that scripture that I had shared with him. Proverbs 21, verse 1. The heart of the king is in the hands of the Lord. And I said, Lord, guide this man. He has the nation in his hands now. Guide him. Give him wisdom. Help him to facilitate. Help him to lead. Grant him the ability to accommodate everyone that he needs to accommodate around him. And let him have the courage to make the decisions that need to be made. And after I said amen, he said amen, got up and sat. I said, so sir, I will now endeavor to try and see whether we can reach Mr. Lungu. But how do I get in touch with you? Should I call the secretary to the cabinet? He says, no, Bishop, you call me. You call me directly. Just like you did, you call me. It was a humbling moment. I had a rare insight into this person's life. That is why yesterday when I was asked at the funeral location, when I was asked to describe him, I said he was a rare breed, a rare breed, really. That was unusual for me to see, because we didn't know him as this person who was so openly religious. But I could tell at that moment that he was open for the God who placed him in that role to guide him. And what Dr. Fred Membe wrote about him the other day, about his loyalty, for instance, to the late President Sata, I think that showed that day, because I think Dr. Fred Membe described him as one who learned the political tricks from the skills of President Sata. You could tell. But this was insight I had into this man's life. So anyway, let me progress. So I left that place and said, I'll get back to you. So quickly, I rushed back to the vestry at the church. I realized this assignment was large. I called one of my colleagues, the late Pukta Mwanza. I said, you know, I've just met the acting president. There's a crisis. We need to meet people in the ruling party. And it looks like right now we need to somehow reach Mr. Edgar Lungu. However, we also need to reach Mr. Kalaba, because it looks like he's the one who chaired the meeting that where 23 members called for the resignation of the acting president. So my friend thankfully came quickly. We sat and prayed, and I made the call to Mr. Kalaba. Mr. Kalaba said, Bishop, it's very hard. Right now we're headed to Parliament. I can't meet you. I said, no, we need access to Mr. Edgar Lungu. This is serious. I know you people are aware that you have a crisis in your party, but you're the ruling party. Something must happen. He said, no, Bishop, it's difficult. And we went back and forth. And then eventually he said, well, I can't help this unless you come to Parliament. I said, yes, Honorable, we can come. So Pukuta Mwanza and I went and camped at Parliament. We camped there until they had a break. It was now mid-afternoon. When they had a break, we saw Mr. Edgar Lungu, Honorable Edgar Lungu at that time, being ushered somewhere. So we tried to go towards there. And of course, we were pushed away. And we tried to explain this is serious and so on. They said, no, you can see the chairperson. So Honorable Winner, we're given access to her. We're taken to a committee room and a few other officials. So we tried to explain what this was about. And we needed to have the group sit together. Something was going on. By now, I had not yet disclosed the encounter that I had with Guy Scott. So we had a few others there from the leadership of the Patriotic Front then. Then they said, Bishop, I think this came directly from Mr. Davis Miller. I think you're talking to the wrong people. The person you should be talking to is Guy Scott, because he's the person that we have aught with. I said, well, you want to know? They said, yes. I said, well, I was with the acting president this morning. And because of the conversation I had with him, it is the reason why the two of us are here. You two need to meet somehow. Can we get you into a room somewhere? Can we find a way? And we went back and forth until finally they committed. They said, no, tonight we are busy, we have some commitment somewhere, but maybe tomorrow night, which would be like, it was Thursday night now. Maybe tomorrow night we can meet. So we agreed, 20:30 we'd meet at the vestry at our church. By now it was almost 6 p.m., 18 hours. I phoned Dr. Guy Scott and told him we had had a fairly successful meeting. They were willing to be met next day. Could I meet him so that I could give him a full brief? He says, no, it's already late, Bishop, I'm at home. Come to Government Complex, the residence, tomorrow at 10. So next day, Thursday morning, I was at Government Complex. Since he was operating from there, sometimes at the office, sometimes at the complex there. I found him in the same relaxed moment. He says, now tell me what happened yesterday. So I narrated to him what I've just narrated to you, that we had a successful meeting. I was with my colleague, Mwanza, and this is what happened, who we met, Honorable Winner. We couldn't meet Mr. Edgar Lungu, but the team was representative enough and they were committed. So you can meet them tonight. Yeah, who are you meeting? Well, I said, well, it will be the key people. We may meet Honorable Lungu himself, but this is where it's at. He says, you know, Bishop, if this thing works, I'll be the first one to get on the presidential chopper and to campaign for Edgar Lungu. By that time, Dr. Charlotte was coming down the stairs. I remember him calling out to her, saying, Charlotte, let me take a look at the speech. You know, Bishop is making progress. So Charlotte came, and I reminded her yesterday. You know, I remember the moment that she came down the stairs. I remembered her yesterday. So she sat there. He got the speech, whatever they were preparing for. He looked at it, and he made changes and gave it back to her. And he says, you know, Bishop seems to be making progress, and I'm anticipating this. In the meantime, I remember he was coordinating calls. I can be specific now. I remember he was coordinating calls. I remember him getting on a call with Honorable Sampa, getting on a call with the MP Chongwe, Sylvia Masebo. These were people on the ground. You remember there had been a court case, something legal that was going on, and they had to go to Ndola. And so I remember him exchanging some instructions and saying, please, hang on a little bit. The Bishop seems to be making some progress here, and so on. I remember those conversations.
Right.
Anyway, long story short, after about an hour of being together, he said, look, I think let's leave it. Let's wait. But provisionally, if this meeting could be able to take place tonight with this group, then tomorrow, Friday, let's have a meeting at a venue you can choose. And at that time I said, I'll consult my fellow church leaders. Maybe we could meet at a particular venue. We thought of the cathedral at that time and so on. And so that's where we left things. In the meantime, we were collaborating, working with Mr. Kamalata, the private secretary, and going back and forth. And by that time, I'd involved my colleague, the late Chilinda. We were working together. He was very close to Honorable Sampa. And so he was managing that side now, because he was very, very close to Honorable Sampa and trying to make sure. He says, no, Bishop, I'll make sure that this young man is available when we need him. So we were coordinating this and making sure that the nation was receiving the attention that it needed to receive. So fast forward, Thursday night, had a meeting with the Medical Association of Zambia. Dr. Mjajatu will remember, I made a presentation there and quickly rushed for the meeting at the church in the vestry. And the then chair, Mr. Mukupa, as the high-level leader in the party, is the one who led the delegation. And so they came, and Honorable Kanduluo, Davis Miller, and others came, and we met. And so we began to discuss. And I explained to them that what I had seen, and the conversation with Dr. Scott, and that there was willingness, and that they could actually come together. The tension in the nation was too much. Right. And the two groups, the Edgar Lungu group, the Sampa, Guy Scott group, so to say, was also very, very firm. Each of the groups were firm in wherever they were seated in their positions. And so this tension was spilling over into the nation. Right. We said, you can't just consider yourselves as a political party. You're the ruling party. This thing is now national. And thankfully, they were listening. But at some point, it got very tense. And they said to me, no, Bishop, you don't understand. You don't understand the hatred that's going on. They talked about the media. At that time, I must tell you, they mentioned the post. They said, look at the hatred that's being pushed out there. You don't understand the kind of hatred that is out there for our team, for our candidate, and so on, and what's being pushed. It is at that moment, and you've probably heard me, in January, I reflected this at one time in the church because I felt compelled to share a portion of this. When they mentioned that, I said, no. There is something that is greater than the power of hate or hatred. I said, it's called love. And when I mentioned that, the atmosphere kind of changed in there. And we zeroed in on that. I must commend the group. They all felt, no, okay, Bishop, we'll do what we can to somehow get our candidate, Honorable Lungu, available for the talks tomorrow. Since you say that Dr. Guy Scott has asked for about 5 or 6 people from our side, we'll make sure 5 or 6 people are available. You let us know the venue. And so we prayed. It was 23:30. We prayed. We had sealed this. I called Mr. Kamalata and said, look, can we get hold of the acting president? We've sealed this thing. The Edgar Lungu group seems to be ready to be to meet with you, with the other team tomorrow. So then it was arranged that I should go and brief Dr. Scott on Friday, but he was at his residence. He gave me a call about mid-morning. He said, Bishop, sorry, I'm not at the office, I'm at the residence. I have a meeting with service personnel, which will finish just before 12. So can you be at my residence at 12? And sure enough, on Friday at 12, as I was driving in at the residence, I saw service persons leaving. Found Dr. Scott, and he said, so who did you meet? As he was welcoming me. Who did you meet? So I said, no, I met Honorable Nkanduluo. I mentioned who. He says, no, you can't be serious. You met Nkanduluo? So I don't know what was going on in the background, but I must just tell you. You met Nkanduluo? No, you can't be serious. What kind of charm do you have, Bishop? And so he led me up to the patio. Then he calls out to Charlotte. He says, Charlotte, he says, here's the joke of the day. Can you imagine the bishop says he met Nkanduluo? I'm just saying to the bishop, what kind of charm does he have? So they laughed it off. We sat there, and he allowed me to give him the details that I've just narrated to you. He says, wow, if this is the case, he got on the phone. I heard him now with such authority calling. He says, no, Bishop, if this is the case, I have to tell my team to drop the legal thing that we're pushing in Ndola. So he says, Miles, I heard him saying that, Miles, get back. He says, tell Sylvia, please, everybody get back, stand down. I think what the bishop was working on here is going to work for us. Get back. I witnessed a man in authority putting the interest of the nation at the very pinnacle. I witnessed him pulling away from partisan interests and trying to place the greater interests of the nation. I witnessed him pulling the group that he had influence over to the center where dialogue needed to be. That's why I've described him as a man who was sacrificial, a man who placed dialogue before anything else, and who helped to bring Zambia back to stability when it would have slid into instability at that time without people realizing it. Fast forward. So after that conversation, he said, please, confirm with us where the venue will be. I will have about 6 people with me. Let Honorable Lungu come with 6 people. I'm ready. So that afternoon, we camped at St. Ignatius with my late friend Chilinda and a few other people waiting. The venue we had really wanted didn't work. Then we tried one of the hotels. It didn't work because there was now need for money. And we didn't have anywhere to get this money, and we couldn't go anywhere. And we didn't want political parties paying for this. So, so we just said, all right, we'll just wait. We're now waiting for a call from the Patriotic Front to confirm. They did confirm. We're now waiting for another call from Dr. Scott to confirm that his team would be available with the temporary venue that we had. And that didn't happen. So 5:30, we almost lost hope. Let me briefly narrate. That evening, it's about 17 hours, not 5:30. I had a commitment at church at 5:30. So I said, I bid farewell. We actually broke camp and said, well, maybe these people are not serious. So we broke camp. And from St. Ignatius to our church is very close. As I was driving in, around 17:15, the phone rang. It was Dr. Scott, finally giving feedback. He said, Bishop, where are you? I said, well, we met and we thought we were now giving up. He says, no. My security team has confirmed that we just have to have this meeting at State House because there's no way I can be out there. They've advised I can't be out after 6 p.m. at any other venue. Can you reach Edgar and Tim? If they're comfortable, the meeting will be at 8 p.m. at State House. We made those calls. Everybody agreed. The rest is history.
Okay.
8 p.m. we were at State House. We met the two groups. We were in that cabinet room. He made me sit right where the president sits, in that room where they have cabinet meeting. He brought the gavel, placed it on my side. When we arrived by 7:45, Honorable Edgar Lungu and his team, and I commend him, because this was a difficult moment. He and his team were there ahead of time. So it was serious. So I was made to sit there. Dr. Guy Scott and his team were on the right. Honorable Kasolo, the family spokesperson, was one of the people. So he will tell you this. And Honorable Lungu and the team were on my left. I was given the meeting to chair. So prior to this, I'd had some time of prayer. I'd done a 7-point program agenda. And so I had 15 folders with me. I opened those folders, shared the sheet, made sure that each group was okay with the agenda. They agreed, and we prayed, started the meeting, conversated. There were many tense moments. A few times I asked whether I could even use the gavel, and he said yes, and I had to say order, because it was very tense.
Right.
But long story short, at about 22:15 that night, I asked, what shall be the symbol of peace? Dr. Guy Scott got up from where he was, walked behind me, went to Honorable Edgar Lungu, extended his hand. Honorable Lungu got up. They shook hands, and everybody got up and said, hug, hug. The two hugged. The atmosphere in that room again changed. It was like that night, Thursday evening, and they hugged. That's how the reconciliation was done. Then I saw the man again, acting president, take charge. He says, okay, Edgar, do you have a speech? Because you are the candidate now. Do you have a speech? He says, no. Davis, Bridget Atanga was on the other side as the secretary. Davis on the other side. Bridget and Davis, can you make sure you have a speech ready for Edgar? Tomorrow is a crucial day. He says, Bishop, now we have a press briefing at 10. You have to be there. I said, no, that's political. He says, no, you have to be there. Otherwise, people will think it's a fluke.
Okay. So
he insisted that we had to be there. So I saw him taking charge and telling everybody what to do. And so as I drove home, around 23, I called my late friend. Said, I cannot be, sorry, in Bemba.
Right.
I cannot be there alone. So that's how you saw Bachilinda and myself there. And that's how the acting president announced to the nation that last night, the PF agreed to bury the hatchet. And under the chairmanship of Dr. Banda here, we have agreed to reconcile.
Wow.
And he said, if there was an award of a chairman of the week, he said, this would be my chairman of the week. Dr. Guy Scott led that constitutional transition. That day, they went ahead. At least we escaped from the nomination.
Right.
But we were at least present only at government complex. That day, they went. He was the first one to lodge his NRC, as we saw from the press. The rest is history. He campaigned. When the election came on, was that January 20th or something, 2015? When that election came, finally, Edgar Lungu was elected to finish the unexpired term. For me, who had seen that vision and who had been given the words, you have given this matter your greatest shot. What remains for you now is to hang on until you hand over power to someone else. It was such a relief and a joy and an assurance of the divine way in which God intervenes in the affairs of men and women and allows destinies to come to pass. When I saw Dr. Guy Scott handing over power to now, at that point, President Lungu-elect, who was being ushered in, I knew God had acted for Zambia.
Right.
But there had to be an instrument. That instrument was Dr. Guy Scott. We honor him today, and he has a place, a distinguished place in this country.
Wow. Insights which we've never heard, and now people know the real truth about behind the personality of Dr. Guy Scott. So many times people guess, speculate on people's personalities and attitudes, and so many times the church is, the role the church plays is underplayed sometimes, undermined in many instances, and disrespected, unfortunately, in certain quarters. We want to thank you for sharing what you just have, and I'm sure that there is a lot more understanding where this country is coming from. He could have chosen to hang on to power, but
he could have hung on. In fact, I must tell you, some things are rather very delicate. He actually opened up and said, when the other group where Mr. Lungu, the late, was elected as the candidate in Kabwe. Remember, he was not there. But as acting president, he said, Bishop, there's been pressure from my people for me to use
instruments of power.
Yeah, to just go and disturb, to have gone and disturbed what was going on in Kabwe. He says, I said no.
Right.
I said no. Now
Correct.
that is character. That is character. Because the instruments of power were in his hands. And when people stand like that in history, we should not allow political expediency. We should not allow narrow agendas. And like you said, sometimes even the role of the church is either undermined, underplayed, and we choose when to say yes, the church, no, the church, and so on. But I must tell you that you're looking at the legacy of a man. And you've heard from the variety of political leaders, both opposition and ruling, who, without exaggeration, and as genuinely as you can tell, they have expressed their admiration for this man. Absolutely. A rare gem. So each one of us have that opportunity. And I think that as we go to 13th August 2026, my reminder to us as Zambia, as we put this great son of the soil, Dr. Guy Scott, the late, to rest today, my reminder is that we remember that there is a God in heaven.
Absolutely.
God is leading us, and he's the one who chooses. So I encourage the candidates out there and their proxies to be sober, share your message, convey whatever you have to convey to the masses, as respectfully as possible, as clearly as possible, give the people a chance to make that choice. But God, when he has chosen someone, whosoever he has chosen, that person's name and strengths and their suitability for the moment is what will be pronounced in the hearts of the voters, and they will emerge. But we must have confidence in divine guidance.
Absolutely.
Therefore, for that reason, be humble and open to one another. Be accommodating.
We have to go.
Absolutely.
Right. Professor Bishop Joshua Banda, what can we say? There's more to learn, and we appreciate your sharing of this deep, deep insights, and I'm sure that we've been well appreciated. Thank you for coming.
My utmost pleasure, and may God bless Zambia.
Here now is a message that we have to read, and this is coming from Dr. Fred Membe, and you described Dr. Scott as a loyal soldier. Dr. Fred Membe has written this and says, although I'm a master of words, I have difficulties trying to write something on Dr. Guy Scott's death. This is because Guy was a very complicated person. Guy was too many things to handle in one piece. I first met Dr. Guy Scott in August 1990 at the house of the late Dr. Gilbert Ndanda, a friend of mine who also was Guy's intellectual associate. The intellectual life was still very much in Guy. He had not yet become political, had the opportunity to see him transform into a very practical, down-to-earth, and very committed politician. I think politically, the best of Guy came out when he got into the league of Michael Sata. Guy was mesmerized by Michael's political skills. He was completely won over and truly became a loyal disciple of Michael. In some way, Michael made Guy politically, and Guy increased Michael's credibility and daskia and political appeal. And together, they delivered victory and victory for the PF in 2011. From Guy, we learned the meaning and purpose of loyalty in politics. Guy was loyal to the very end, and Michael reciprocated. People are loyal to those who are loyal. Guy is a great lesson to the political opportunities of today's Zambia's politics, who exchange loyalties like a chameleon. My condolences to Guy's widow, Charlotte, a very intelligent and lovely human. I also send my condolences to Guy's children, relatives, and friends. May his soul rest eternal peace. Fred Membe.